The rain hammered against the windshield as Brianna Carter sat frozen in the driver's seat, staring at the padlock on her apartment door. Her hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles ached. In the back seat, 8-year-old Aiden tried to keep 6-year-old Destiny quiet while baby Jordan whimpered in his car seat. Everything they owned was stuffed into black trash bags piled in the trunk and crammed around the children's feet. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. "Mommy, I'm cold," Destiny whispered, her voice small and scared. Brianna closed her eyes, fighting back tears. She'd been a registered nurse for 7 years. She'd worked double shifts, holidays, weekends. She'd done everything right. But when the hospital announced budget cuts last month, her position was eliminated. Just like that. No warning. No severance package worth mentioning. Just a pink slip and 2 weeks to clear out her locker. She tried. God knows she tried. She'd applied to every hospital, clinic, and urgent care center within 50 miles. She'd called in every favor, reached out to every contact. But nursing positions were scarce, and without a current license renewal fee paid, which she couldn't afford, most places wouldn't even look at her application. The eviction notice had come 17 days ago. She'd begged her landlord for more time, but he had bills too. Today, when she'd returned from another fruitless job interview, the locks were changed. Her belongings sat on the curb in the rain until she frantically stuffed them into bags and threw them in her 10-year-old sedan. "Mommy?" Aiden's voice cracked. He was trying so hard to be brave. "Where are we going to sleep?" The question pierced her heart. She had exactly $43 in her wallet. Her gas tank was below empty. Her phone had 17% battery left because she couldn't pay the electric bill to charge it properly. She had no family, her parents were gone, and her husband's family had cut contact after he died 3 years ago. Her friends were struggling themselves, most in one-bedroom apartments with no room for a mother and 3 children. She couldn't go to a shelter. She tried calling too, but both were at capacity with waiting lists weeks long. The thought of her baby sleeping in this car, vulnerable and cold, made her stomach twist with panic. That's when she saw it. Across the street, partially hidden behind overgrown bushes and a rusted chain-link fence, stood an old brick building. She'd driven past it 1,000 times without really seeing it. The windows were mostly intact but dark. No lights. No movement. The front door had boards across it, but they looked weathered and loose. It was abandoned. Brianna's breath caught. She couldn't. She shouldn't. Breaking and entering was illegal. What if someone caught them? What if the building was dangerous? What? Jordan started crying harder, his sobs growing desperate. Destiny joined in, her small body shaking. Aiden stayed silent, but when Brianna glanced in the rearview mirror, she saw tears streaming down his face as he tried to comfort his siblings. Her children needed shelter. Tonight. Right now. The decision crystallized in that moment. She would do whatever it took to protect her babies. Legal or not, right or wrong in society's eyes, she was their mother. Their protector. And that building was empty while her children were cold and scared. "Listen to me," Brianna said, turning to face her children. She forced strength into her voice she didn't feel. "We're going to stay somewhere safe tonight. Somewhere dry and warm. But you have to be very quiet and do exactly what Mommy says. Can you do that?" All 3 children nodded. Even baby Jordan seemed to sense the seriousness in her tone. Brianna waited until full darkness settled over the street. The rain continued, which was good. It kept people indoors. She drove around the block twice, making sure no one was watching. Then she parked in the alley behind the building, out of sight from the main road. She pulled her red jacket tight around herself. "Aiden, you carry this bag. Hold Destiny's hand. I'll carry Jordan. Stay close to me. Don't make a sound." Her heart pounded as they approached the back of the building. A metal door hung slightly ajar, the lock broken long ago. She pushed it open slowly, wincing at every creak. The smell of dust and mildew hit her nose, but it was dry. It was shelter. Inside, she used her phone's flashlight to navigate. The beam revealed what had once been a community center. There was a large open room with a stage at one end. Smaller rooms branched off to the sides. Old furniture sat covered in dust sheets. The electricity was off, but the structure seemed sound. No holes in the roof. No broken windows letting in rain. "Is this our new house?" Destiny asked quietly. Brianna's throat tightened. "Just for tonight, baby. Just until Mommy figures things out." She found a small room that might have been an office. It had a couch, a desk, and a door that closed. She pulled the dust sheet off the couch, revealing surprisingly intact cushions. Not perfect, but better than the car. Using more trash bags, she created makeshift bedding. She had one blanket, which she wrapped around all three children as they huddled together on the couch. She gave them the last of the crackers from her purse and the bottle of water she'd been saving. "Tell us a story, Mommy," Destiny begged. So Brianna sat on the floor beside the couch and told them about princesses and dragons and happy endings, her voice steady even as her mind raced with fear about tomorrow. One by one her children drifted to sleep, exhausted from stress and confusion. Only then did Brianna allow herself to break. She sat in the darkness of that abandoned building, her children sleeping fitfully behind her, and let the tears come. Silent sobs shook her body. How had she ended up here? How had everything fallen apart so completely? But even as despair threatened to drown her, something stirred deep inside. A fierce determination. A mother's love that burned brighter than any fear. She would find a way through this. She would protect her children. She would survive. She had to. Outside, the rain continued to fall, washing away the old world. Inside, a family huddled together in the darkness, holding on to hope with desperate fingers. Neither of them knowing that someone had seen them enter the building. Someone who would change everything. Have you ever felt completely alone with nowhere to turn? This mother's courage will move you. If this story touches your heart, please subscribe and comment below with what you would do in her situation. Your support means everything. Morning light filtered through the dirty windows, creating dusty beams across the abandoned room. Brianna woke with a jolt, her neck stiff from sleeping propped against the wall. For a moment she forgot where she was. Then reality crashed back heavy and cold. Her children still slept on the couch, tangled together like puppies. Jordan's thumb was in his mouth, his cheeks still baby-soft. Destiny had her arm around him protectively. Aiden lay on the outer edge, always the guardian even in sleep. Brianna stood slowly, her body aching. She needed to think. She needed a plan that extended beyond tonight. First, she explored the building more thoroughly in daylight. The main room was large, maybe 40 feet by 60 feet, with high ceilings and that stage at the far end. 5 smaller rooms branched off, most with intact doors. The bathrooms still had running water, cold only but water nonetheless. A small kitchen area had a sink and old cabinets. No working appliances but storage space. The building was in better shape than she'd hoped. Someone had maintained it once, cared for it. Now it sat forgotten waiting. The front entrance was boarded, but the back door she'd used was hidden from the street. As long as they were careful, as long as they stayed quiet. No, she couldn't think like that. This was temporary. Just a few days while she figured out their next step. She used some of their precious water to wash her face in the bathroom sink. The mirror showed a woman she barely recognized. Her beautiful brown skin looked ashy from stress. Her eyes, usually bright and warm, were shadowed with exhaustion. Her natural hair, normally styled nicely, was pulled back in a messy bun. She wore jeans and that red jacket that had seen better days. She was only 29 years old. She'd had plans once. Dreams. Her husband, James, had died suddenly from an undiagnosed heart condition 3 years ago. She'd been 6 months pregnant with Jordan. The medical bills from his hospitalization and her grief had derailed everything. She'd been climbing back slowly but surely. And then the layoff came. "Mommy?" Brianna turned to find Aiden in the doorway. His face was worried, too old for 8 years. "Good morning, baby." She pulled him into a hug. "Are we going to school?" The question stabbed her. "School. Normalcy. The things children deserved." "Yes. We need to get ready." She had one clean outfit for each child in the bags. She washed their faces and hands with cold water, brushed their teeth with the supplies she'd managed to save. She changed Jordan's diaper, grateful she'd grabbed the pack from the apartment. Breakfast was a problem. She had no food. The $43 had to stretch impossibly far. "I'm hungry," Destiny said, her voice thin. "I know, sweetheart. We'll get breakfast on the way to school." A lie. She'd figure something out. She drove them to school in the car that was now also their only guaranteed shelter. At Aiden's elementary school, she walked him to the door, kissing his forehead. "Have a good day. I'll pick you up right here at 3 o'clock. Promise?" His eyes searched hers. "I promise." She did the same with Destiny at the kindergarten wing. Then she sat in the car with Jordan, trying to decide what to do next. She had 6 hours before pickup. 6 hours to change their circumstances. She drove to a fast food restaurant and used $3 to buy a small order of fries and a cup of water. She fed Jordan first, letting him eat most of it. She ate 3 fries herself, her stomach growling in protest at the meager offering. Then she made calls. Every lead from the last month she tried again. Every connection, no matter how thin. Most numbers went to voicemail. The ones that answered gave the same response. Nothing available right now, keep checking back. By noon she'd gotten nowhere. Jordan needed a proper meal. She drove to a convenience store and bought a small jar of baby food, a banana, crackers and a bottle of water. $8. She had 32 left. She fed Jordan in the parking lot, then applied to jobs on her phone until the battery hit 5%. At a library she charged it while filling out more applications online. Jordan played quietly with some old toy cars she'd salvaged, probably sensing that silence was important. At 3 o'clock she picked up her children. They climbed into the car, faces brightening at seeing her. She'd been terrified all day that somehow they'd be taken away. That someone would notice, would question, would intervene. "How was school?" she asked with forced cheerfulness. "Good," Aiden said, but he pulled a paper from his backpack. "My teacher gave me this." It was information about the free lunch program. Brianna's cheeks burned with shame, but she swallowed her pride. "Thank you, baby. This is helpful." She signed them up that afternoon. At least they'd eat one meal a day now. But what about breakfast? What about dinner? They returned to the building as evening fell. She'd stopped at a dollar store and bought bread, peanut butter, a gallon of water and some apples. $14. She had 18 left. Inside their hidden shelter she made peanut butter sandwiches. The children ate hungrily. She had half a sandwich herself, making sure they had enough. "Can we watch TV?" Destiny asked. "No TV tonight. But we can play a game." Brianna created stories, had them use their imaginations. They played I Spy and 20 questions. They sang songs. She kept them distracted, kept them from asking too many questions about why they were still here in this strange place. After the children fell asleep, Brianna sat in the darkness, planning. She'd noticed some of the dust-covered furniture could be useful. Tomorrow she'd clean things up, make it more livable. Just until she found work. Just until she could afford a real place. She'd also noticed something else during her exploration. In one of the back rooms there were old supplies. Cleaning products, light bulbs, tools. Someone had stored them and forgotten them. She could use those things. Days began to blur together. She established a routine. Wake early, wash the children with cold water, get them to school. Spend her days applying for jobs, doing anything she could find for cash. She cleaned a woman's house for $40. She helped someone move furniture for $30. She watched a neighbor's dog for $20. Every dollar stretched impossibly thin. At the building she cleaned and organized. She found candles in one of the storage boxes, giving them light in the evenings. She washed their clothes in the sink and hung them to dry. She discovered the building had once been a community center with programs for families. How ironic that it now sheltered a family with nowhere else to go. 2 weeks passed this way. The children adapted with the resilience of youth, though Brianna saw the strain in Aiden's eyes. He knew this wasn't normal. He knew they were hiding. She lived in constant fear. Fear that someone would discover them. Fear that social services would take her children. Fear that she was failing them in every way that mattered. But she didn't give up. Every morning she got up and tried again. Every day she loved her children fiercely and told them everything would be okay. Every night she prayed for a miracle. She didn't know that her prayers were about to be answered in a way she never expected. She didn't know that someone had already found them, was already watching, was already forming a plan to help. All she knew was that tomorrow she'd wake up and fight again. Because that's what mothers do. They fight. Theodore Mitchell stood in the rain outside the old community center on Riverside Avenue, watching the dim glow of candlelight through the dusty windows. He'd discovered them 3 days ago, quite by accident, and he hadn't been able to stop thinking about them since. He'd been surveying his properties in this neighborhood, evaluating which buildings to renovate next, when he'd noticed movement in a building he'd forgotten he owned. This particular property had been tied up in estate paperwork for years after he'd purchased it from a complicated inheritance situation. He'd meant to do something with it but had been focused on larger projects. The first night he'd seen them, he'd almost called the police. Someone was squatting in his building. But something made him pause. Maybe it was the way the woman moved so carefully, keeping 3 small children quiet and calm. Maybe it was the protective way she positioned herself between the children and the door, always alert. Maybe it was the fact that instead of drugs or parties or destruction, all he'd witnessed was a mother trying desperately to care for her babies. So he'd watched. Not in a creepy way, he told himself, but in a concerned way. He needed to understand the situation before acting. Theodore was 42 years old, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark brown skin and close-cropped hair that was just starting to gray at the temples. He wore an expensive blue suit, Italian leather shoes, and a watch that cost more than most people's cars. But he hadn't always lived like this. He'd grown up in foster care, bouncing between homes that barely tolerated him. He'd spent 2 years living in shelters with his foster family when the system failed them both. He remembered the shame of it, the fear, the constant uncertainty. He remembered what it felt like to be hungry, to be cold, to wonder if tomorrow would be worse than today. An adoption at 12 had changed everything. A middle-class couple, unable to have children of their own, had chosen him. Given him stability, education, love. He'd worked hard, earned scholarships, built a real estate empire through determination and smart investments. Now he owned 40 properties across 3 cities and employed over 100 people. But he'd never forgotten where he came from. He'd never forgotten what it felt like to have nothing. Tonight, he watched the woman through the window. She was beautiful, even exhausted and struggling. Her movements were graceful despite the circumstances. She wore the same red jacket he'd seen her in every day. She was reading to her children by candlelight, their faces turned toward her with complete trust. Something in Theodore's chest tightened. This woman was fighting so hard. She could have given up, could have made easier but worse choices. Instead, she woke up every morning, got her children to school and kept trying. He'd seen her leave with job applications, return with small bags of food. He'd seen her wash their clothes in the sink, seen her go without food so her children could eat. She reminded him of his adoptive mother, who'd loved him when no one else would. Who'd believed in him when he'd given her every reason not to. Who'd taught him that kindness and hope weren't weaknesses, they were strengths. Theodore made a decision. He pulled out his phone and made several calls. First to his property manager, getting information about the building's current status. Then to his lawyer, asking questions about liability and options. Finally, to his HR director at Mitchell Properties, inquiring about open positions. By the time he finished, he had a plan. It wasn't charity, he thought, it was an opportunity. For her and for him. He needed a good property manager for his residential buildings. Someone who understood what his tenants faced, who'd manage with compassion instead of just collecting rent. And she clearly needed stability, income, and housing. It was a business decision that happened to help someone in desperate need. That's what he told himself. But deep down, Theodore knew it was more than that. Something about this woman and her children had touched something in him he'd thought was long buried. The next morning, Theodore arrived at his office building downtown, the headquarters of Mitchell Properties. His assistant, Patricia, a competent woman in her 50s, greeted him with coffee and his schedule. "Cancel my morning meetings," Theodore said. "I need to handle something personal." Patricia raised an eyebrow but nodded. She'd worked for him for 10 years and knew better than to question his decisions. Theodore drove back to the community center, timing his arrival for mid-morning when the children would be at school. He wanted to talk to the woman alone first without scaring the kids. He parked across the street and waited. Sure enough, at 9:30 she emerged from the building, looking around carefully before hurrying to her car with the toddler on her hip. He followed at a distance as she drove to a library. Inside, he watched her settle at a computer, the child playing quietly beside her. She was applying for jobs, her face set in determined lines. Every few minutes, she'd glance at her son, making sure he was okay. Theodore approached slowly, not wanting to startle her. "Excuse me?" She looked up, and he saw fear flash across her face before she masked it. "Yes. I'm sorry to interrupt. My name is Theodore Mitchell. I own Mitchell Properties downtown. I noticed you've been applying for property management positions." A small lie but a useful one. Her eyes narrowed suspiciously. "How would you know that?" "I recognized you from an application that came through our system. Your resume was impressive." Another small lie. "Do you have a few minutes to talk about a possible position?" She glanced at her son, then back at Theodore. He could see her weighing the decision, calculating risks. "What kind of position?" "Live-in property manager for several of my residential buildings. The job includes an apartment, benefits, and a competitive salary. I need someone who understands what tenants go through, someone with compassion and good judgment." Her face went carefully blank. "Why are you really here?" Theodore respected that. She was smart, not easily fooled. "Can we talk somewhere more private?" "No." She stood, holding her son protectively. "I don't know you. If you have a job offer, you can email me through the proper channels." "I own the building on Riverside Avenue," Theodore said quietly. "The old community center." All color drained from her face. Her grip on her son tightened. "Please don't call the police. Please. I'll leave right now. Just give me an hour to get my kids from school and we'll go. Please." The desperation in her voice cut through him. I'm not calling the police. I want to help. Why? Tears filled her eyes. Why would you help us? Because I've been where you are. Maybe not exactly, but close enough. And because I can. Will you let me? Brianna stared at the man in the expensive blue suit standing in front of her in the library. Theodore Mitchell. Owner of Mitchell Properties. And apparently owner of the building she'd been squatting in for 2 weeks. Her mind raced through possibilities. This was a trap. It had to be. Men like him, wealthy men in suits who appeared out of nowhere, didn't help women like her. They called the police, they pressed charges, they took children away from unfit mothers who broke into buildings. I don't want your help, she said, the lie bitter on her tongue. She wanted help desperately, but accepting it from a stranger felt dangerous. Then think of it as a job offer, Theodore said calmly. I legitimately need a property manager. Someone to handle tenant issues, coordinate maintenance, collect rent, keep the buildings running smoothly. The position comes with a 3-bedroom apartment in one of my nicer buildings, full benefits including health insurance, and a starting salary of $55,000 a year. Brianna's breath caught. $55,000? With an apartment included? That was more than she'd made as a nurse. It was enough to rebuild their lives. It was everything she needed. Which meant it couldn't be real. What do you really want? She asked, her voice hard. Jordan whimpered at her tone, and she forced herself to soften, bouncing him gently. Men don't just offer women free apartments and jobs. What's the catch? Theodore's expression didn't change. The catch is that it's hard work. 8 residential buildings, over 200 units. Tenants call at all hours with problems. Pipes burst, appliances break, people can't pay rent, people fight with neighbors. You'll coordinate with contractors, handle complaints, do inspections. It's not easy. But why me? You don't know me. You don't know if I'm qualified. You're a registered nurse, correct? That shows you can handle responsibility, work under pressure, and care about people. You're also clearly resourceful and determined. Those are the qualities I need. He paused. I also checked your license status. If you want, I can cover the renewal fee as part of your employment package. Keep your nursing credentials active in case you ever want to return to healthcare. That detail caught her off guard. He'd done research? Why do you care about my nursing license? Because I believe in people having options. You shouldn't have to choose between feeding your children today and maintaining your career credentials for tomorrow. You should be able to do both. Brianna wanted to believe him. God, how she wanted to believe him. But she'd been disappointed too many times. Life had taught her that if something seemed too good to be true, it usually was. I need time to think about it, she said. Of course. But while you're thinking, consider this. Theodore pulled a business card from his pocket and wrote something on the back. That's my personal cell number. I'd like to show you the apartment that would be yours, let you see the buildings you'd manage. No obligation. Just information to help you make an informed decision. She took the card reluctantly. The front read Theodore Mitchell, CO, Mitchell Properties, with an address downtown. The back had a phone number in neat handwriting. What if I say no? She asked quietly. Then you say no. I'm not going to report you for staying in the community center. That would be cruel, and I don't do cruel. But I am going to have the back door fixed for security reasons, probably by the end of the week. So you'd need to find somewhere else to stay regardless. Of course. Even if she refused his offer, she was losing her shelter. The universe really wasn't giving her much choice. Can I see the apartment today? The words came out before she could stop them. Theodore smiled for the first time, and it transformed his face from stern businessman to something warmer. Absolutely. I can take you right now if you'd like. I have to pick up my other kids from school at 3. Then we have plenty of time. Theodore drove a black luxury sedan that probably cost more than she'd earn in 2 years. Brianna followed in her old car, not willing to be dependent on him for transportation yet. Jordan fell asleep in his car seat, exhausted from their unstable life. The building was in a nice neighborhood, not wealthy but solid middle class. Clean sidewalks, maintained properties, a small park visible down the street. The brick building stood 4 stories tall with neat landscaping around the entrance. Inside, Theodore led her to an apartment on the 3rd floor. He unlocked it and stepped back, letting her enter first. Brianna walked in and felt her throat close up. It was beautiful. Hardwood floors gleamed in the afternoon light streaming through large windows. The living room was spacious with a green couch and matching chairs. A real kitchen with full appliances including a dishwasher. Down a hallway she found 3 bedrooms. Not huge but more than adequate. The kids could each have their own room for the first time in their lives. Bathroom has a tub and shower, Theodore said from the doorway, giving her space. Heat and water included in your employment package. You'd pay electric and internet only. There's a washer and dryer in the basement for residents, free to use. Brianna stood in the middle of the living room, holding her sleeping son, and felt tears burn her eyes. This was a home. A real home. Safe, clean, stable. Everything she'd been trying to provide but couldn't. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. Theodore was quiet for a moment. "When I was 7, I was in a foster home where the father was—" He paused, choosing words carefully. "Not kind. I ran away and spent 3 nights sleeping in an abandoned building before someone found me. I was terrified every second. I remember thinking that if one person, just one person, had been kind enough to help me, everything would be different." He met her eyes. "Someone eventually did help. A social worker who actually cared, who found me a better placement. Then a family who adopted me and gave me everything. I'm successful now because people were kind when they didn't have to be. I'm just passing that forward. This is more than kindness. This is changing our entire lives." "Yes," he agreed. "Because I can. I have the resources and the opportunity. Why wouldn't I use them to help when I know exactly how much it matters?" Brianna looked around the apartment again. She thought about her children, about Aiden's worried face and Destiny's questions and Jordan's needs. She thought about the abandoned building with its cold water and candlelight. She thought about the fear that never left her, the shame, the exhaustion. She thought about pride and how little it mattered compared to her children's well-being. "What do I have to do?" she asked. "What forms do I fill out? When can we move in?" Theodore's smile returned. "I'll have the paperwork ready by tomorrow morning. You can move in immediately. The apartment is yours regardless of whether the job works out, at least for the first 6 months. That gives you stability while you adjust. I can't pay rent for 6 months if the job doesn't work. Consider it part of the employment package. Training period with housing included." He pulled out his phone. "Now, let's talk salary, schedule, and benefits. I want you to understand exactly what you're agreeing to." They sat at the kitchen table and Theodore walked her through everything. The salary paid bi-weekly. Health insurance that started immediately, covering all 3 children. The job responsibilities with written descriptions so there were no surprises. Even a provision for emergency childcare if she needed it for work duties. "This is a contract," Theodore said, sliding papers toward her. "Read it thoroughly. Have a lawyer look at it if you want. Take your time." Brianna read every word. The contract was fair, surprisingly generous even. Everything he'd promised was there in writing. The apartment clause specified that if she was fired for any reason, she had 60 days to find new housing. She quit, she had 30 days. Either way, her children wouldn't be immediately homeless. At the bottom there was a signature line. Brianna picked up the pen, then paused. Years of struggle had made her suspicious, wary. But years of struggle had also taught her to recognize real opportunity when it appeared. This was real. This man was offering her and her children a lifeline when they were drowning. She signed her name. "Thank you," she said, her voice breaking. "Thank you for giving us this chance." "Thank you for accepting it," Theodore replied. "Some people are too proud to accept help even when they desperately need it. That false pride does more harm than good. You were smart enough to set yours aside for your children's sake. That takes real strength." For the first time in months, Brianna felt something other than fear and desperation. She felt hope. Real, tangible hope. Her children would sleep in beds tonight. They'd have food in the refrigerator. They'd have stability and safety. "Can I bring them here after school?" she asked. "Let them see their new home?" "It's your home," Theodore said. "You don't need my permission. Here are the keys." The keys felt heavy in her hand. Weighted with possibility, with change, with a future she'd thought was lost forever. As Theodore left, promising to return tomorrow morning with the official paperwork and more details about her job duties, Brianna sat alone in the apartment with Jordan still sleeping in her arms. She looked around at the space that was now theirs. Really, legally theirs. And for the first time since losing her job, since finding that eviction notice, since breaking into an abandoned building out of sheer desperation, Brianna let herself cry tears of relief instead of despair. Things were going to be okay. They were really going to be okay. Aiden and Destiny stood in the doorway of the apartment, their eyes wide with disbelief. Brianna watched their faces, her heart full to bursting. "Is this real?" Aiden whispered. "Is this really our house?" "Really, truly our house," Brianna confirmed, unable to stop smiling. "Come see your rooms." The children exploded into motion, running down the hallway and shouting with excitement. Destiny picked the smaller bedroom with windows facing the park. I can see the swings from here, Mommy. Aiden chose the room next to hers, already planning where his books would go, where he'd do homework. Jordan toddled between rooms, laughing at his siblings' joy. That night, Brianna used some of Theodore's advance on her first paycheck to buy real groceries. Not just cheap staples but fruits and vegetables, milk, chicken for dinner, ingredients to make actual meals. At the store she felt like she was in a dream. She could buy the things her children needed. She could say yes instead of no. She made spaghetti with meat sauce, garlic bread, and a salad. They ate at the kitchen table together, and Brianna couldn't stop looking at their faces. Clean, fed, safe. Everything a mother wanted for her children. This is the best dinner ever, Destiny declared, tomato sauce on her cheeks. It was just spaghetti. Basic, simple food. But after weeks of peanut butter sandwiches and ration meals, it felt like a feast. After dinner, Brianna gave them real baths in the actual bathtub with hot water. She washed their hair with shampoo she'd bought instead of stolen motel samples. She put them in clean pajamas and tucked them into their beds with actual mattresses and sheets and blankets. Tell us a story, Destiny said, her eyes already drooping. So Brianna told them a story about a family who got lost in the woods but found their way home again. About hope and kindness and never giving up. About happy endings that seemed impossible but came true anyway. When all 3 children were asleep, Brianna walked through the apartment slowly, touching things to make sure they were real. The couch. The refrigerator full of food. The thermostat showing a comfortable temperature. The lock on the door that kept them safe inside. She pulled out her phone and looked at Theodore's business card again. Tomorrow morning, he'd be here at 9 to go over her job duties, introduce her to the building she'd manage, and make everything official. She needed to be ready, professional, competent. She needed to prove he'd made the right choice. But tonight, she just needed to feel the gratitude washing over her in waves. Someone had helped them. Someone had seen them struggling and reached out a hand instead of turning away. Changed everything. The next morning, Theodore arrived exactly at 9, carrying a briefcase and wearing a green dress shirt with black slacks. He looked professional but approachable, less intimidating than he'd seemed in the library. "Good morning," he said when Brianna opened the door. The children peeked out from behind her legs, curious and cautious. "You must be Aiden, Destiny, and Jordan. I'm Theodore. I work with your mom now. Are you the one who gave us this house?" Aiden asked directly. Theodore crouched down to the boy's eye level. "Your mom earned this house by accepting a job working for me. She's going to help a lot of people who live in buildings I own. That's important work, so the house is part of how I pay her for doing that job. Does that make sense?" Aiden considered this seriously, then nodded. "That's fair. I'm glad you think so." Theodore stood. "Brianna, shall we go over the details? Or would you prefer to arrange childcare first?" "My neighbor across the hall, Mrs. Lopez, already offered to watch Jordan during work hours. She's home with her own grandbaby and said one more is no trouble." Brianna had met the older woman yesterday while moving in, and they'd bonded immediately. "The older 2 are in school until 3. Perfect. Mrs. Lopez is one of my longest-term tenants. She's wonderful." Theodore opened his briefcase. "Let's start with the building layouts and tenant lists." They spent 3 hours going over everything. Theodore was thorough but patient, explaining systems and procedures clearly. He showed her the maintenance request system, the rent collection process, how to contact contractors for different issues. He gave her emergency numbers and protocols. "The most important thing," Theodore said, "is treating tenants with respect and dignity. Most people who rent are doing the best they can. If someone's late on rent, find out why before taking action. Maybe they need a payment plan. Maybe they need to be connected with assistance programs. Always try to help before you threaten." "That's not how most landlords operate," Brianna observed. "I'm not most landlords. I remember what it's like to barely scrape together rent money. I remember what it's like when landlords treat you like you're disposable." He met her eyes. "My buildings are going to be different. That's why I needed someone who understands that personally." Over the following weeks, Brianna threw herself into the work. She was good at it, discovering skills she hadn't known she had. She could calm angry tenants, coordinate complicated repairs, manage budgets efficiently. She genuinely cared about the people living in these buildings, and it showed. A single mother struggling to pay rent? Brianna helped her apply for assistance programs and arranged a payment plan. An elderly man whose apartment was too cold? Brianna had maintenance there within 2 hours, then followed up to ensure the heating system was fixed properly. A young couple whose neighbors were too loud? Brianna mediated diplomatically until everyone was satisfied. Theodore visited the buildings regularly, checking on operations. He always asked Brianna for updates, listened to her suggestions, and often implemented her ideas. He treated her like a valued colleague, not just an employee. "You've reduced complaints by 30% in the first month," he said one afternoon, reviewing reports in her small office. "Tenant satisfaction is up. How are you doing it?" "I just listen to people," Brianna said. "And I follow up on everything. Most complaints aren't about big issues, they're about feeling ignored. When people know someone actually cares, they're more patient and understanding. It's more than that. You have a gift for this." Theodore smiled. "I'm glad you accepted my offer." "I'm glad you made it," Brianna replied honestly. "You changed our lives. You changed your own lives. I just gave you an opportunity. You're the one doing the work." But it was more than just the job. The apartment, the stability, the regular income, everything combined to transform their family. Aiden's worried expression eased. He started bringing home artwork from school again, signs that he felt safe enough to be creative. Destiny made friends in the building, children she could play with after school. Jordan thrived with a consistent schedule, regular meals, and a happy mother. Brianna found herself laughing again, something she'd forgotten how to do. She took the kids to the park on weekends. She bought them new clothes when they needed them without panicking about the cost. She paid her bills on time, rebuilt her credit, renewed her nursing license as Theodore had promised to cover. She saw Theodore often in those first months. He'd stop by to discuss building issues, but the conversations always stretched beyond business. He asked about her kids, remembered details she'd mentioned. He recommended a good pediatrician when Jordan had a cold. He brought Destiny a book about princesses when he heard she loved reading. He was kind in ways that felt natural, not performative. He helped an elderly tenant carry groceries. He paid for repairs out of his own pocket when they exceeded the building budget. He treated everyone from contractors to residents to Brianna with the same respectful courtesy. Brianna found herself looking forward to his visits. Found herself noticing details about him, the way his face softened when he smiled, how he rolled up his sleeves when helping with something hands-on, the patience he showed when explaining complicated business matters. She pushed those thoughts away at first. He was her boss. He'd saved her family from homelessness. Getting involved romantically would be inappropriate, a confusion of gratitude with other feelings. But as weeks turned into months and Theodore continued to be consistently kind, respectful, and genuine, Brianna began to wonder if maybe, possibly, he felt something too. The way his eyes lingered on her face sometimes. The way he found reasons to extend their conversations. The way he asked about her, not just her work, but her dreams and thoughts and experiences. Neither of them acted on it. The timing felt delicate, the professional relationship important to maintain. But something was growing between them, something warm and real and tentative. Something that felt like hope for more than just financial stability. Something that felt like the possibility of love. 3 months after moving into the apartment, Brianna sat in Theodore's downtown office, reviewing quarterly reports. The meeting had been scheduled for an hour but was stretching into its second as they discussed expansion plans. "I think we should focus on renovating existing buildings rather than acquiring new properties," Brianna said, pointing to maintenance trends. "The buildings on Elm and Cherry need significant updates. If we invest there, tenant satisfaction will improve and we'll reduce emergency repair costs long-term." Theodore leaned back in his leather chair, studying her. "You've been doing research. I want to be good at this job." "You're already excellent at this job. These insights go beyond good management. You think strategically." He made a note on his tablet. "I'll allocate budget for those renovations. Which should we prioritize?" They spent another hour planning. Brianna loved this part, the problem-solving and planning. She loved that Theodore valued her opinion, asked for her input, treated her like a true partner in the business rather than just an employee. When they finally finished, Theodore stood and stretched. "It's past 7. Have you eaten?" Brianna checked her phone and saw 3 texts from Mrs. Lopez. "The kids are fed and doing homework. Mrs. Lopez has them. Then let me buy you dinner. We've earned it after that marathon session." Brianna hesitated. They'd shared meals before, always quick lunches while discussing work. But dinner felt different. More personal. "Is that appropriate? I mean, professionally. I'm inviting my property manager to a business dinner to discuss strategy. That's entirely appropriate." Theodore's expression was carefully neutral, but something in his eyes suggested he was hoping she'd say yes for reasons beyond business. "Okay. Yes. That sounds good." They went to a small Italian restaurant a few blocks away, nothing fancy but warm and welcoming. Theodore ordered wine, and Brianna allowed herself one glass, feeling sophisticated and adult in a way she hadn't experienced in years. At first they talked about work. But as the meal progressed and they relaxed, the conversation drifted to personal territory. "Tell me about your husband," Theodore said gently. "You never talk about him." Brianna was quiet for a moment, swirling wine in her glass. "James was wonderful. Kind, funny, devoted to us. We'd been married for 5 years when he died. Heart condition no one knew he had. He collapsed at work one day and was gone before I even got to the hospital. I'm so sorry. I was 6 months pregnant with Jordan. The grief almost destroyed me. But I had 2 other children who needed me and a baby coming. I couldn't fall apart completely." She smiled sadly. The medical bills from his hospitalization, the funeral costs, everything piled up so fast. I was drowning financially before I even had time to process the loss. That's when things started to spiral? Yes. I kept working as a nurse, but childcare for 3 kids ate most of my paycheck. I had no family to help. James's family blamed me somehow for his death, like I should have known about his heart condition. They cut contact. She took a breath. I was climbing out of it, slowly. And then the layoff came. Theodore reached across the table and covered her hand with his. The gesture was simple but intimate. "You're one of the strongest people I've ever met. I just did what I had to do." "No. You did more than that. You protected your children while maintaining your dignity and hope. You never gave up. That's strength, not just survival." Brianna felt her throat tighten. "You saved us. I don't say that enough. Without you, I don't know what would have happened." Theodore was quiet for a long moment. "Can I tell you something? About why I really offered you that job?" "Okay. I told you I'd been in foster care and shelters. That's true. But what I didn't tell you is that my birth mother was like you. A single mom trying desperately to keep us together. She worked 3 jobs. She did everything she could. But the system is designed to punish poverty, not help it." His hand tightened on hers. "One day she missed too much work because I was sick. They fired her. We got evicted. She had nowhere to go, no options left. So she left me and my sister at a fire station with a note saying she couldn't take care of us anymore." "Theodore," Brianna whispered. "I was 5. My sister was 3. I remember my mother crying as she walked away. I remember thinking she didn't love us anymore. It took me years to understand that she loved us so much she gave us up because it was the only way we'd be safe and fed. Did you ever find her? She died 2 years after leaving us. Drug overdose. I think the guilt destroyed her." His eyes were wet. "When I saw you in that building with your kids, I saw my mother. Fighting so hard. Doing everything right but losing anyway because the world isn't fair. And I thought, what if someone had helped her? What if one person with resources had stepped up? Maybe she'd still be alive. Maybe we'd have grown up together." Brianna turned her hand over and squeezed his. "I'm sorry you lost her. I'm sorry she lost us. And I'm sorry the world is set up so that hard-working people fall through the cracks constantly." He met her eyes. "But I can change that for some people. I have money and power now. I can help. And when I saw you, I knew I had to. Not out of pity, but out of understanding and respect." They sat in silence for a moment, hands still linked across the table. The restaurant buzzed around them, but in their corner, it felt like they were alone. "I need to tell you something too," Brianna said quietly. "I'm grateful for the job and the apartment. Grateful beyond words. But lately, when you visit, I'm happy for reasons that have nothing to do with work." Theodore's eyes searched her face. "What reasons?" "I like seeing you. I like talking to you. I like the way you are with my children, the way you treat people, the way you see the world." She took a breath. "I'm developing feelings that go beyond professional appreciation." "Brianna, I know it's complicated. You're my boss. You helped us when we had nothing, and I don't want you to think I'm confusing gratitude with something else. But I needed to be honest." Theodore stood and came around to her side of the table. He crouched beside her chair so they were eye level. "I've been fighting those same feelings for months. Every time I see you, I want to stay longer. Every time you smile, I memorize it. Every time I leave, I count the hours until I have a reason to come back." "But?" Brianna asked because she heard the hesitation. "But I don't want you to feel pressured. I have power in this situation, financial power, employment power. I never want you to feel like you owe me anything beyond good work. If we explore this, whatever this is, it has to be because we both want it freely. Not because you feel obligated." "I don't feel obligated. I feel Brianna searched for the right word. Hopeful. Scared but hopeful. Scared of what? Scared of losing what we've built. Scared of messing up this stability my kids need. Scared of loving someone again and losing them. Her voice dropped. Scared of not being enough for someone like you. Theodore's hand came up to cup her face gently. You're more than enough. You're everything. And I'm scared too. Scared of hurting you, scared of failing you, scared of letting you down. But I think maybe being scared together is better than being safe apart. What do? We take it slow. We keep work professional. We make sure your job security isn't dependent on our personal relationship. We put your children first always. And we see where this goes. He smiled. How does that sound? Like you've thought about this a lot. Every day for the last 2 months. Brianna laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years. Then yes, let's try. Theodore stood and helped her up. Instead of sitting back down, he kept her hand in his. Can I take you to dinner again? A real date this time, not a business meeting? I'd like that. They finished their meal with a new awareness between them, a delicious tension that promised possibility. When Theodore drove her home, he walked her to her door like a proper gentleman. He didn't kiss her, not yet, but the way he looked at her made Brianna's heart race. Good night, Brianna. Good night, Theodore. Inside, Mrs. Lopez gave her a knowing smile. That man looks at you like you hung the moon, Mija. It's complicated, Brianna said, but she couldn't stop smiling. The best things always are. That night, after checking on her sleeping children, Brianna stood at her bedroom window and looked out at the city lights. 6 months ago, she'd been sleeping in an abandoned building, terrified and hopeless. Tonight, she had a home, a job, and the beginning of something that might be love. Life could change so fast. Sometimes for the worse. But sometimes, blessedly, for the better. 2 months later, Brianna stood in the old community center on Riverside Avenue, the same building where she'd hidden with her children what felt like a lifetime ago. Theodore stood beside her, both of them wearing jeans and comfortable shirts, ready for work. So what do you think? Theodore asked, gesturing at the space. Can we turn this into something that helps people? It's perfect, Brianna said, walking through the main room. Sunlight streamed through windows that had been cleaned and repaired. The floors had been swept, revealing beautiful hardwood beneath the dust. It's big enough for multiple programs. Office space, meeting rooms, that stage could be used for community events. They'd been officially dating for 6 weeks, taking things slowly as promised. Theodore met her children regularly now, not as her boss but as mommy's friend. He took them to the park, helped Aiden with science homework, read stories to Destiny, played with Jordan. The kids adored him, especially Aiden, who was hungry for positive male attention. But they'd kept the relationship private otherwise, careful not to mix their personal and professional lives. At work, they remained boss and employee, maintaining appropriate boundaries. Only on weekends, away from the buildings, did they relax into being simply Theodore and Brianna, 2 people falling in love. This community center project felt like a bridge between those worlds. Theodore had approached her with the idea a month ago, nervous and excited. I've been thinking about this building, he'd said. About what it meant to you when you needed it, even in its abandoned state. What if we turned it into a real resource center? A place that helps families before they reach crisis point. Brianna had been immediately enthusiastic. What kind of resources? Everything. Housing assistance, job training, childcare, food programs, counseling. A one-stop place where people can get help without being shamed. With dignity and respect. It would need someone to run it. Someone who understands what families need. Theodore had smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. Would you consider being the director? It would mean leaving the property manager position, but the salary would be higher, and the work would be more focused on direct service. Now they stood in that vision, planning how to make it real. Over the past month, Theodore had hired contractors to make the building safe and functional. New windows, repaired roof, updated electrical and plumbing, fresh paint. The bones of the building were solid, the repairs just brought it back to life. We'll need a staff, Brianna said, taking notes on her tablet. Case managers, administrative help, childcare workers. I'm budgeting for 10 full-time employees to start, more as we grow. Theodore walked to the stage area. This space could host community meetings, workshops, maybe even performances for kids. A food pantry in that back corner, Brianna pointed. Set up like a grocery store so people can choose what they need, maintaining dignity. And the kitchen can be used for cooking classes, teaching people to prepare nutritious meals on tight budgets. I love that. Theodore was always impressed by how Brianna thought through every detail with the end user in mind. What else? They spent hours planning, their excitement building. This wasn't just a building or a program. It was a statement that people mattered, that communities could support each other, that those with resources had a responsibility to help those without. What should we call it? Theodore asked as they sat on the stage floor, eating sandwiches and surrounded by planning documents. Brianna thought for a moment. The Hope Center. Because that's what it gives people. Hope that things can get better. The Hope Center, Theodore repeated. Perfect. Over the next 3 months, they worked tirelessly to bring the Hope Center to life. Brianna transitioned out of property management, training her replacement carefully. Theodore connected them with social service agencies, securing funding and partnerships. They hired staff members who were passionate about community service. The children were part of it too. Aiden helped organize donated books for the library corner. Destiny picked out toys for the childcare area. Even Jordan contributed by testing the play spaces to make sure they were fun. Theodore's relationship with the kids deepened during this time. He took Aiden to baseball games, attended Destiny's school performance, pushed Jordan on the swings. He was patient, kind, and genuinely interested in their lives. He never tried to replace their father but carved out his own important place in their hearts. One evening, after helping paint a mural in the Hope Center's main room, Theodore and Brianna sat on the front steps watching the sunset. Paint streaked their clothes and skin. They were tired but happy. "Can I ask you something?" Theodore said quietly. "Anything. Where do you see this going?" Brianna looked at him, this man who'd changed her entire life. "I see it going wherever we want it to go. I'm not scared anymore, Theodore. I love you." It was the first time either of them had said the words aloud. Theodore's face transformed with joy. "I love you too. I've loved you since I watched you reading to your kids by candlelight, determined to give them hope even when you had none for yourself." He kissed her then, gentle and sweet, full of promise. When they pulled apart, Brianna was smiling. "What does this mean for us?" she asked. "It means we stop being quite so careful. It means I want to be part of your family, really part of it, if you'll let me. It means I'm all in, Brianna. Completely. I'm all in too." They sat in comfortable silence as the sky darkened, their hands linked, their futures intertwining. Inside the building behind them, their shared dream was taking shape. A place that would help hundreds of families, built on the foundation of their own story. The Hope Center opened on a Saturday morning in late spring. Over 200 people attended, including local officials, press, and community members. Brianna, wearing a beautiful blue dress Theodore had insisted on buying her, gave a speech about the center's mission. "6 months ago, I was homeless with 3 children and no options," she said, her voice steady. "This building sheltered us in our darkest moment. Now it's been transformed into a place that will shelter others, not just physically but through support, resources, and community. Everyone deserves hope. Everyone deserves help. That's what the Hope Center represents." Theodore stood at the side, watching her with pride. When she finished, the applause was thunderous. Local news cameras captured everything. Brianna cut the ribbon, officially opening the center, and people flooded in to explore. The day was a tremendous success. Dozens of families signed up for services immediately. The food pantry distributed food to 20 families. 3 people secured job interviews through the employment program. 2 families found housing through the assistance program. As the day wound down and the crowds thinned, Theodore found Brianna in her new office, a small room overlooking the main center floor. She was organizing files, already thinking ahead to Monday morning. "You were amazing today," he said from the doorway. "We were amazing. This is our project, Theodore. Yours and mine together." He came in and closed the door. "I have something to ask you." Something in his tone made Brianna's heart race. Theodore looked nervous, a rare expression on his usually confident face. "I know it hasn't been that long. 6 months since you moved into that apartment, 5 months since we started dating. But I've never been more sure of anything." He took her hands in his. "I love you. I love Aiden, Destiny, and Jordan. I want to build a life with all of you, officially and permanently." He pulled a small box from his pocket but didn't open it yet. "I'm not asking today. It's too soon and I don't want to rush you. But I wanted you to know my intentions. I want to marry you, Brianna. When you're ready. If you're ready." Brianna felt tears streaming down her face, happy tears this time. "I'm ready," she whispered. "You're sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." Theodore opened the box, revealing a simple but elegant diamond ring. "Brianna Carter, will you marry me?" "Yes." Yes, absolutely yes. He slipped the ring on her finger, and it fit perfectly as if it had always belonged there. They kissed, surrounded by the walls of a building that represented their journey together. From desperation to hope. From strangers to partners. From broken to whole. Outside, the sun was setting over the city. Inside the Hope Center, families were getting the help they needed. And in a small office on the second floor, two people who'd found each other in the most unexpected way celebrated the beginning of their forever. Love had led them here. Kindness had opened the door. Hope had carried them through. And now, together, they were ready for whatever came next. What would you do if you lost everything but found someone who believed in you anyway? This story proves that kindness can change lives. Subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever received unexpected help? Your story might inspire someone who needs hope today. The engagement was kept quiet for a few weeks, just between them and the children. Brianna wanted to tell Aiden, Destiny, and Jordan first before anyone else knew. She gathered them one evening after dinner, everyone sitting together on the green couch in their living room. Theodore sat beside her, looking nervous. She'd never seen him nervous before, not really, and it was oddly endearing. "Kids, Theodore and I need to talk to you about something important," Brianna began. Aiden looked between them, his expression guarded. "Are we moving again?" "No, baby. Nothing bad. Actually, something good." She took a breath. "Theodore asked me to marry him and I said yes." There was a moment of silence. Destiny spoke first. "Does that mean Theodore will be our daddy?" "I can't replace your daddy," Theodore said gently. "Your father was special and he loved you very much. But I'd like to be part of your family if you'll have me. I love your mom and I love all of you." "Will we live together?" Aiden asked, still cautious. "Eventually, yes. We'll all live together as a family." Brianna watched her son's face. "How do you feel about that?" Aiden was quiet for a long moment. "You really love us? All of us? Not just Mommy?" Theodore moved to kneel in front of the boy, meeting his eyes directly. "I really love all of you. Your mom is amazing, but you three are pretty wonderful too. I love that you're smart and brave, Aiden. I love that Destiny makes up songs and dances. I love that Jordan gives the best hugs in the world. But we're not yours. We're someone else's kids. That doesn't matter to me. Love doesn't work that way. I get to choose who I love and I choose all of you. If you'll let me." Aiden studied Theodore's face, looking for any sign of deception. Whatever he saw must have satisfied him because he nodded slowly. "Okay. You can marry Mommy. But you have to promise to always be nice to her and to us." "I promise. Every single day." Destiny clapped her hands. "Can I be a flower girl? I've always wanted to be a flower girl." "Absolutely," Brianna said, laughing through tears. "Jordan can be a ring bearer." "What about me?" Aiden asked. "You can walk me down the aisle if you want. You're the man of this family after all." Aiden's face transformed with pride and emotion. "Really? Really?" They spent the evening talking about wedding plans, the children's excitement building. By bedtime, they'd planned everything from the color scheme, Destiny insisted on purple, to the cake, chocolate with vanilla frosting, Jordan's favorite. After the kids were asleep, Theodore and Brianna stood in the kitchen, washing dishes together in comfortable silence. "That went well," Theodore said. "They love you. They've loved you for months." Brianna handed him a plate to dry. "Aiden especially. He needs what you give him, that steady male presence and attention. He's a great kid. They all are." Theodore set the dried plate in the cabinet. "Have you thought about timing for the wedding?" "Nothing too long. 6 months maybe? I don't need a big elaborate thing, just something meaningful with the people we care about. Whatever you want, I'll make happen." He pulled her close. "I can't wait to make this official. We're already official in every way that matters." "True. But I want everyone to know you're mine and I'm yours. I want the legal protection for you and the kids. I want it all." They'd already discussed the practical aspects. Theodore insisted on a prenuptial agreement, not to protect himself but to protect Brianna. If anything ever happened to him, he wanted to ensure she and the children were financially secure. The prenup detailed exactly what she'd receive, including ownership of the Hope Center and a trust fund for the children's education. "You don't have to do all that," Brianna had protested when he first explained it. "I want to. You're my family now. I take care of my family." Planning the wedding became a family activity. Every weekend they'd sit together and make decisions. Small church ceremony or outdoor garden party. Neither, they decided. They'd get married at the Hope Center, the place that represented their journey and their shared mission. Guest list? Small. Just close friends, the Hope Center staff, and a few of Theodore's business associates who'd become genuine friends. Brianna had reconnected with a few former nursing colleagues who were thrilled to be invited. Food. Theodore wanted to hire an expensive caterer, but Brianna convinced him to support local businesses instead. They hired a small catering company run by a family the Hope Center had helped, making the celebration mean even more. As the months passed, their relationship deepened. They navigated the challenges of blending their lives. Theodore met the rhythm of their household, the chaos and joy of 3 children with different needs and schedules. Brianna adjusted to his world, meeting his friends and business partners, learning to be comfortable at fancy dinners and charity events. But mostly they just lived. Sunday mornings making pancakes together. Tuesday nights helping with homework. Saturday afternoons at the park. The ordinary moments that built a life. Theodore moved some of his things into their apartment, though he kept his own place for now. It felt important to move slowly, letting the children adjust to each change gradually. But more and more, his real home was wherever Brianna and the kids were. One evening about 4 months after the engagement, something shifted. They'd put the children to bed and were sitting on the couch, Brianna's feet in Theodore's lap as he rubbed them absently while they watched a movie. "I was thinking," Theodore said quietly, "what if we bought a house? Somewhere with a yard for the kids, maybe space for a dog." "You hate dogs," Brianna teased. "I don't hate them. I've just never had one. But Aiden wants one, and what Aiden wants, Aiden should get. You're going to spoil them." "Absolutely. That's my job as the stepdad." He smiled. "But seriously, would you want that? A house we choose together? A place that's ours from the beginning?" Brianna considered it. The apartment had been her safe haven, her rescue. But a house they picked together that they made into their family home? That felt like the next chapter. "Yes. I'd love that. Then we'll start looking after the wedding. Something in a good school district, close enough to the Hope Center that your commute is easy. Nothing too big or expensive. How about we let me decide what I can afford?" Theodore said gently. "I have money, Brianna. A lot of it. Let me use it to give our family comfort and security. It's hard for me. Accepting so much. I know. But it's not charity. You're my partner, my equal. What's mine is yours now." He kissed her forehead. "Besides, you give me more than I could ever give you." "What do I give you?" "A family. Well, purpose. You made me see that my money and success mean nothing if I'm not using them to make the world better. The Hope Center exists because of you, because of your heart and vision. You changed me, Brianna. Made me better." She kissed him then, deep and full of emotion. When they pulled apart, she whispered, "I can't wait to marry you. 2 more months. 2 more months." At the Hope Center, the impact continued to grow. In 6 months, they'd helped over 100 families find housing. The job training program had a 90% placement rate. The food pantry served 300 families weekly. Childcare allowed parents to work or attend school without worry. Support groups helped people dealing with grief, addiction recovery, and financial stress. Brianna thrived in her role as director. She knew most clients by name, remembered their stories, celebrated their victories. She'd hired staff who shared her philosophy of dignity and respect. The center became known throughout the city as a place that truly helped, not just process people through systems. Theodore remained involved, visiting weekly to check on operations and support initiatives. But he let Brianna run things, trusting her vision and leadership. He was proud of her in a way that made her feel valued and capable. One afternoon, a young woman came to Brianna's office. She was maybe 22, with a baby on her hip and fear in her eyes. "I heard you help people," the woman said. "I got evicted. I have nowhere to go. I have a job, but I can't afford first and last month's rent for a new place, and I can't go to a shelter with my baby." Brianna looked at this young mother, saw herself 6 months ago, and felt her heart expand. "Sit down. Let's figure this out together." They spent 2 hours going through options. Brianna connected her with a rapid rehousing program the Hope Center had partnered with. She helped her apply for assistance with the rental deposit. She found a childcare slot so the woman could keep working. By the time she left, the young mother was crying with relief. "Thank you," she whispered. "You saved us. You saved yourself by asking for help. That takes courage." Brianna hugged her. "Come back anytime you need support. That's what we're here for." After the woman left, Brianna sat at her desk and thought about how far she'd come. From desperate and hiding to helping others avoid that same desperation. From broken to whole. From alone to surrounded by love. Her phone buzzed with a text from Theodore. "Dinner tonight?" "Just us." I want to take my future wife somewhere nice. She smiled and typed back, I'd love that. Everything was falling into place. The wedding was planned. The Hope Center was thriving. Her children were happy and healthy. She was in love with a man who cherished her and her kids. Life had become something beautiful and full of promise. Sometimes, in quiet moments, Brianna thought about that night in the abandoned building. The fear, the desperation, the feeling that everything was lost. She'd been in her darkest moment, convinced there was no way forward. But there had been a way. And it had led her here to joy and purpose and love. It had taught her that hope wasn't naive, it was necessary. That kindness wasn't weakness, it was power. That asking for help wasn't shameful, it was brave. She'd learned those lessons in the hardest way possible. And now, every day at the Hope Center she got to teach them to others. She got to be for someone else what Theodore had been for her. The person who said yes when the world kept saying no. The person who offered hope when despair seemed certain. It was the best job she'd ever had. Better than nursing, though she loved that too. This was her calling, her purpose. Helping people rebuild their lives one family at a time. And soon she'd officially become part of Theodore's family, just as he'd become part of hers. They'd stand together and promise forever, surrounded by people they'd helped and people who'd helped them. 2 more months. Then everything would be perfect. The morning of the Hope Center's 1-year anniversary celebration dawned bright and clear. Brianna stood in her office, looking out at the main floor where staff members were setting up tables, hanging banners and arranging flowers. The center had grown beyond her wildest dreams in 12 months. Her wedding was 3 weeks away. Today's celebration would serve double duty, marking both the center's success and her engagement to Theodore. She'd invited everyone who mattered, staff, clients, volunteers, local officials, and the press. "Mommy, you look pretty," Destiny said from the doorway. The 6-year-old wore a purple dress with white flowers, her hair styled in adorable puffs. "Thank you, baby. You look beautiful too." Brianna wore a red dress that Theodore had chosen, elegant but appropriate for a community event. "Where are your brothers?" "Aiden is helping Mr. Theodore set up chairs. Jordan is with Mrs. Lopez." Everything was coming together perfectly. The past year had been transformative, not just for the Hope Center but for Brianna personally. She'd grown confident in her role as director. She'd built programs that actually worked, that changed lives measurably. She'd assembled a team of dedicated professionals who shared her vision. And through it all, Theodore had been her partner. Supporting her, advising when asked, staying out of the way when she needed space to lead. Their relationship had strengthened through shared purpose and genuine partnership. By noon, over 300 people filled the Hope Center. The mayor gave a speech praising their innovative approach to community service. Local news cameras captured testimonials from families who'd been helped. One woman shared how the job training program got her hired at a hospital, leading to stable income and housing. A man talked about how the food pantry kept his family fed during a medical crisis. A couple described how housing assistance prevented their eviction. Each story reinforced why this work mattered. Brianna felt overwhelmed with gratitude and pride. This building, where she'd once hidden in shame, now stood as a beacon of hope for hundreds. When it was her turn to speak, Brianna took the microphone with steady hands. Theodore stood at the side, Aiden, Destiny, and Jordan beside him. Her family. "1 year ago we opened these doors with a simple mission: help people with dignity and respect," Brianna began. "We believe that everyone deserves support during difficult times. We believe that poverty isn't a moral failing, it's a circumstance that can be changed with the right resources." She looked around the room. "This past year, we've helped over 400 families find housing. We've placed 250 people in jobs through our training program. We've provided childcare for working parents, food for hungry families, and counseling for those dealing with trauma and stress. But more than that, we've built a community." Applause interrupted her. Brianna waited for it to quiet, then continued. "None of this would exist without Theodore Mitchell, who had the vision and resources to make it happen. But he'd tell you, and he has told me many times, that the vision was shaped by understanding what people actually need. That understanding came from experience, from knowing what it's like to struggle and to hope for better." She met Theodore's eyes. "Theodore not only built this center, he also changed my life personally. He gave me and my children a chance when we had nothing. He believed in me when I'd stopped believing in myself. And he taught me that kindness isn't just a nice idea, it's a practical force that changes the world." Theodore smiled at her, his expression full of love and pride. "Today marks 1 year of the Hope Center. But it also marks something else." Brianna took a breath. "Theodore asked me to marry him 6 months ago and I said yes. We wanted to share this news with all of you, our community, the people who make this place what it is. The room erupted in cheers and applause. Theodore joined Brianna on the small stage, taking her hand. She said I changed her life, Theodore said into the microphone. But she changed mine. She showed me what real courage looks like. She turned my wealth into something meaningful. And she's taught me every day what it means to lead with compassion and integrity. He turned to Brianna. I'm honored to build this life with you, to be part of your family, to work alongside you in this mission. You make me want to be better, do better, give more. They kissed to thunderous applause. The children ran up on stage, joining the embrace. For a moment, Brianna just stood there, surrounded by her family, surrounded by their community, and felt completely, utterly happy. The celebration continued for hours. Food was served, music played, children ran through the center's play area. Brianna moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations and hearing more stories of how the Hope Center had helped people. One elderly woman grabbed her hand. You gave my granddaughter somewhere to go when she was homeless with 2 babies. Now she has an apartment and a job. You saved my family. The center saved your family, Brianna corrected gently. We were just the tool. Your granddaughter saved herself by asking for help and working hard. Still, thank you. Those 2 words, repeated dozens of times throughout the day, filled Brianna with purpose. This was why she worked so hard. This was why the mission mattered. Every family helped, every crisis averted, every person given hope, it all added up to something bigger than herself. As evening approached and the crowds thinned, Brianna found Theodore on the front steps of the center, watching the sunset. She sat beside him, leaning into his solid warmth. Today was perfect, she said. You were perfect. That speech moved everyone. I meant what I said. About you changing my life. Theodore wrapped his arm around her. We changed each other's lives. That's how the best relationships work. Both people making each other better. They sat in peaceful silence, watching the sky turn orange and pink. Inside, staff members were cleaning up. Children played under their parents' watchful eyes. The Hope Center hummed with life and purpose. What are you thinking about? Theodore asked. How different everything is from a year ago. How scared I was then, how certain I was that we'd lost everything. And now look at us. She gestured at the building. We built this. Together. And we're going to keep building. I have ideas for expansion, maybe opening a second location across town. And I'd like to add medical services, basic healthcare for people without insurance. Always thinking bigger, Brianna teased. That's because I have you beside me. Before I just made money. Now I'm making a difference. It's addictive. Good. The world needs more people who are addicted to helping. Theodore stood and pulled her up beside him. Come on. Let's go home. Mrs. Lopez is probably ready for us to collect the kids, and I want to spend the evening with my family. My family. Those 2 words filled Brianna with warmth. She had a family again. Not just the children she'd always had, but a partner, a teammate, a love that made everything else possible. They drove home through the city, the same streets she'd driven in desperation months ago. But tonight those streets looked different. Friendlier. Full of possibility instead of danger. The city hadn't changed, but she had. Her perspective had shifted from despair to hope, from fear to confidence. At their apartment, Mrs. Lopez handed over the kids with a knowing smile. They were angels as always. And congratulations on the engagement. I told you that man was special. You were right, Brianna said, hugging the older woman. About everything. That night they had a quiet family dinner. Nothing fancy, just spaghetti and salad, but eaten together around the table with laughter and conversation. Aiden talked about his upcoming science fair project. Destiny showed them a dance she'd learned in school. Jordan babbled happily, trying to keep up with his older siblings. Theodore fit seamlessly into their rhythm, helping serve food, asking questions, being fully present. This was what family looked like, Brianna thought. Not perfect but real. Full of love and attention and care. After the children were in bed, Brianna and Theodore sat on the couch, reviewing the day's events. The mayor wants to feature the Hope Center in his re-election campaign, Theodore said. As an example of public-private partnership success. Will you let him? Only if you're comfortable with it. This is your center, your leadership. I'm just the money. You're much more than that. Brianna squeezed his hand. But yes, I'm comfortable with it. If it helps more centers like ours get funded and built, then the attention is worth it. Speaking of which, I had a call from a foundation today. They want to fund a national model based on what we've done. Help other cities replicate the Hope Center approach. Brianna turned to him, eyes wide. Seriously? Seriously? They're talking about millions in grants to spread this model across the country. With you as the lead consultant, training others to run similar programs. That's incredible. That's the power of doing good work with integrity. People notice. They want to replicate success. Theodore smiled. You're going to be a national leader in community services. How does that feel? Overwhelming. Exciting. Scary. She laughed. But good. It feels good. Well, you have 3 weeks to prepare. Because after we get married, your life is going to get very busy. 3 weeks. It felt both impossibly far away and frighteningly close. In 3 weeks, she'd officially become Mrs. Theodore Mitchell. Her children would have a legal stepfather who loved them. They'd be a complete family, bound together not just by affection but by commitment and law. Are you nervous? Brianna asked. About the wedding? Not even a little. I've never been more certain of anything. Theodore pulled her close. I'm marrying my best friend, my partner, the love of my life. Why would I be nervous? I'm a little nervous, Brianna admitted. What if I mess up my vows? What if something goes wrong? Then we'll laugh about it later. The ceremony is just one day, Brianna. Our marriage is forever. That's what matters. Forever. A year ago, forever had seemed like an impossibly long time to survive. Now, forever with Theodore didn't feel like long enough. She wanted decades, generations, a whole lifetime of building good things together. I love you, she said simply. I love you too. So much. They sat in comfortable silence, holding each other, planning their future in quiet whispers. Outside, the city continued its endless rhythm. Inside, a family prepared for the next chapter of their story. A story that had started with desperation but was becoming something beautiful. A story about how kindness could change everything, how hope could sustain you through darkness, and how love, real love, made all the struggle worthwhile. In 3 weeks, that story would reach a new milestone. But the journey would continue, filled with purpose and partnership and possibilities they hadn't even imagined yet. 3 weeks passed in a blur of final wedding preparations. Brianna barely had time to be nervous as she coordinated last-minute details while maintaining the Hope Center's operations. Theodore handled most of the logistics, insisting she focus on work and the children. The wedding day arrived with perfect weather. Crisp autumn air, brilliant sunshine, leaves turning gold and red around the Hope Center's newly landscaped grounds. Brianna woke early, her heart pounding with anticipation and joy. Mrs. Lopez came over to help her get ready. She'd become more than a neighbor over these months, more like family. The older woman had tears in her eyes as she helped Brianna into her wedding dress, a simple but elegant cream-colored gown with lace sleeves. You look like a princess, Mija, Mrs. Lopez said, adjusting the veil. I feel like one, Brianna admitted. Is this really happening? It's really happening. That good man is marrying you today, and you're all going to live happily ever after. Destiny twirled into the room, wearing her purple flower girl dress. Mommy, you're so pretty. Thank you, baby. You're beautiful too. Aiden appeared in the doorway, uncomfortable in his suit but standing tall and proud. At 8 years old, he'd matured so much this year, becoming more confident and secure. Having Theodore's steady presence had made all the difference. Are you ready, Mom? He asked, using the more mature term he'd started favoring recently. I'm ready. Are you ready to walk me down the aisle? I've been practicing, he said seriously, making Brianna smile. At the Hope Center, guests gathered in the main room where Brianna had once huddled with her children by candlelight. That space had been transformed with flowers, white chairs, and beautiful decorations. The stage where she told stories to comfort scared children now held an arch of greenery and blooms. Theodore stood near the arch, wearing a dark maroon suit that looked stunning on him. His best man, Carlos Rodriguez from his executive team who'd become a genuine friend, stood beside him. The officiant, a local minister who volunteered at the Hope Center, smiled warmly at the gathered crowd. Music began. Destiny walked down the aisle first, carefully dropping flower petals and waving at people she recognized. Jordan, held by Mrs. Lopez, came next as the symbolic ring bearer. The crowd chuckled at his adorable confusion. Then the music shifted and everyone stood. Brianna appeared at the back of the room, her hand on Aiden's arm. For a moment, she just looked at Theodore, at the man who'd changed her life in every possible way. He looked back at her with such love, such certainty, that any lingering nervousness melted away. This was right. This was meant to be. Aiden walked her down the aisle with careful steps, taking his responsibility seriously. When they reached Theodore, the boy looked up at him solemnly. Take care of my mom, Aiden said, his voice small but clear. Always, Theodore promised. I'll take care of all of you always. Satisfied, Aiden placed Brianna's hand in Theodore's and went to sit with Destiny and Mrs. Lopez in the front row. The ceremony was beautiful and personal. They'd written their own vows, promising love, partnership, and dedication to their family and their mission. Theodore's voice cracked with emotion as he spoke. Brianna cried through her entire vow, happy tears that she didn't try to hide. I promise to love you through easy times and hard times, Brianna said. I promise to be your partner in building good things and helping people and making the world kinder. I promise to raise our children with you, to build a home filled with laughter and purpose, to always choose hope even when things are difficult. I promise to honor the strength that brought you through your darkest times, Theodore said. I promise to be worthy of your trust, to never take for granted the gift of your love and your family. I promise to build our life on a foundation of kindness, to always reach out a hand to those who need it, to teach our children by example what it means to live with compassion and purpose. When the minister pronounced them married, the kiss was tender and full of promise. The crowd erupted in applause. Brianna and Theodore turned to face their community, hands clasped, faces glowing with joy. Ladies and gentlemen, the minister announced, I present to you Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell. The reception was held right there at the Hope Center, in the space where they'd served so many families. It felt perfect, surrounded by the physical representation of their shared values. The catering was delicious, provided by the small business they'd supported. Music played, people danced, children ran around happily. During dinner, several people gave toasts. Carlos talked about how Theodore had changed after meeting Brianna, becoming more focused on purpose than just profit. Patricia, Theodore's assistant, tearfully described watching him fall in love and become a family man. One of the Hope Center's clients shared how Brianna's compassion had changed her life, making it possible for her to get back on her feet after losing everything. When it was Brianna's turn to speak, she stood with Theodore beside her, his hand on her waist. A year and a half ago, I sat in a car outside this building with my 3 children, homeless and terrified, she said, her voice clear and strong. I broke into this building illegally because I had nowhere else to go. I thought I'd lost everything, thought there was no hope left. She looked at Theodore. Then Theodore found us. And instead of calling the police, instead of judging or punishing, he offered help. He offered me a job, a home, a chance to rebuild. He saw past my circumstances to my potential. He treated me with dignity when I felt worthless. Tears streamed down her face, but she continued. That kindness changed everything. Not just for me but for my children and now for hundreds of families who've come through the Hope Center's doors. Theodore taught me that people with resources have a responsibility to help, that success means nothing if it's not used to make the world better. She turned to the crowd. Today isn't just about 2 people getting married. It's about what we can build together when we choose kindness over judgment, hope over despair, love over indifference. It's about what's possible when one person decides to help instead of turning away. The room was silent, people wiping away tears. Brianna raised her glass. To Theodore, who saw potential where others saw problems. To the Hope Center, which represents the best of what communities can be. And to all of you who believe in this mission and help make it real every day. Thank you for being here, for being part of our story. Everyone raised their glasses, drinking to the toast. Theodore pulled Brianna close, kissing her forehead as applause filled the room. The dancing started after dinner. Theodore and Brianna had their first dance to a slow song about building a life together. Then Aiden cut in, dancing with his mother while Theodore danced with Destiny. Jordan bounced in Mrs. Lopez's arms, trying to join the fun. As the evening progressed, Brianna looked around at the celebration. Her children were happy, healthy, secure. Her husband, was watching her with adoration. Their community surrounded them with love and support. The Hope Center stood as a testament to what they'd built together. Later, as the party wound down, Theodore found Brianna on the front steps, the same place they'd sat after the anniversary celebration. Happy? He asked, sitting beside her. Beyond happy. This has been the perfect day. It's just the beginning. We have so much ahead of us. I know. The national expansion of the Hope Center model, buying our house, raising the kids together, all of it. Theodore took her hand, playing with the wedding ring now on her finger. 6 months from now, what do you think we'll be doing? Living in our new house probably. Maybe pregnant again if we're lucky. They talked about having more children together, both wanting to expand their family. Definitely working harder than ever on the Hope Center expansion. And in 5 years? Multiple Hope Centers across the country. Our kids thriving in school. Maybe us thinking about slowing down a little bit. She laughed. Though neither of us is very good at slowing down. True. Theodore was quiet for a moment. In 10 years. Maybe we'll have inspired enough people that this model is everywhere. Maybe poverty won't trap people the way it trapped me, because there will be resources and support in every community. Maybe we'll have changed the system, not just help people survive it. That's ambitious. You taught me to think big. To believe that one person can make a difference and two people working together can change the world. Theodore kissed her, slow and sweet. I love you, Mrs. Mitchell. I love you too, Mr. Mitchell. They sat together as the stars came out, planning dreams and possibilities. Inside, the cleanup was happening. Their family and friends were saying goodbyes. Tomorrow they'd leave for a short honeymoon, just a few days at a beach resort while Mrs. Lopez watched the children. Then they'd return to real life, to work and family and the beautiful chaos of building something meaningful. But tonight they just sat in peace, two people who'd found each other in the most unexpected way. Two people who'd turned tragedy into triumph, despair into purpose, struggle into strength. Their story had started with an abandoned building and an act of desperation. It had grown into a love story, a mission, a movement. And it was far from over. Every day would bring new challenges, new opportunities to help, new chances to show what kindness could accomplish. Brianna thought about that terrified woman who'd broken into this building, convinced she'd failed her children. She wished she could go back and tell that woman, hold on. Just hold on a little longer. Help is coming. Love is coming. Everything you're fighting for is going to be worth it. But she couldn't go back. She could only go forward, carrying those lessons with her. She could only be for others what Theodore had been for her. The person who said yes when everyone else said no, the person who offered hope when despair seemed certain, the person who proved that kindness was powerful and love could change everything. That was the legacy they'd build together. Not just helping people survive but helping them thrive. Not just offering charity but offering dignity and opportunity. Not just one family's salvation, but a model that could be replicated, scaled, spread until poverty wasn't a trap anymore but a temporary challenge that communities helped people overcome. What are you thinking about? Theodore asked, sensing her emotional spiral. How grateful I am. How lucky we are. How much I love you and our life together. I feel the same way every single day. They went inside together, joining their family and friends for the last dances, the final toasts, the joyful chaos of a perfect wedding celebration. And when everyone finally left, when the building was quiet and still, Brianna and Theodore stood in the center of the main room, holding each other in the space where their story had truly begun. Ready to go home? Theodore asked. Always, Brianna said. As long as home is wherever you are. They left the Hope Center hand in hand, walking into their future together. A future built on hope, sustained by love, and dedicated to proving that kindness could change the world one person, one family, one community at a time. Their fairy tale had the best kind of ending. Not a conclusion but a beginning. The beginning of a life lived with purpose, partnership, and endless possibility. The beginning of a love that would last forever. And somewhere in the city, another person was facing their darkest moment, feeling hopeless and alone. But because the Hope Center existed, because Brianna and Theodore had turned their story into a mission, that person would find help. They'd find hope. They'd find proof that kindness still existed, that people still cared, that even the darkest nights eventually gave way to dawn. That was the real happy ending. Not just one family's salvation, but the ripples spreading outward, touching countless lives, changing the world one act of kindness at a time.